This lesson, we're going to be manipulating arrays, applying some array methods. So these are commonly used array methods that you can use in order to get more out of the arrays. So first off, we're going to be creating an array. I'll show you how you can copy an array, and then also the commonly used methods to adding to the array at the end, to the beginning, and removing items from the end and removing items from the beginning, selecting part of the array and returning it back, and also checking to see if a particular value is contained within the array and returning back that index value for it. We're going to be exploring more of what we can do with arrays in JavaScript. So I've got my HTML, main HTML file linked to app10.js, and this is the app10.js file. Let's open up the dev tools. I've got the editor window open on the right-hand side. I'm using the Chrome browser. I'm going to click Inspect and then go to the console so that we can see the JavaScript output in the web browser console. And now we can add and update our JavaScript file. So commonly with arrays, we've got some properties that are contained within the arrays, such things as the length. So let's first set up an array. And once we create an array, you can declare an array to a variable by assigning a value. It can also be a blank array, and then you can add to the array as needed. So let's add in some items into the array. I'm going to add some strings, and we can add various data types. So we can have Boolean values, we can have numbers, we can have strings, we can also have arrays that are within arrays as well. And then these, of course, can just be comma separated. In addition, we can also have objects that are contained within the array. So we can have all the different data types. I'll update and do a word wrap so that we can see the contents that are contained. And since this is an object, I'll just create some object values. And in order to output the content of the array, let's take a look at it in the console. So when we output these items, this is the array as JavaScript sees it. So we've got the strings, the Boolean, the number, and then we got the array that's nested within our parent array, and we also have the object that's nested within the array. So in order to retrieve these values, so if we want to return back the value of test A, let's output that into the console. And I'll create a variable called val, and we'll let val equal the array. And we know in order to return back the result of the array, we can use the index value. I'm actually going to update and add the output onto the page as well. So we'll select the element from the page document using the query selector, select the element with a class of output, and this way we can do both, where we're outputting into the console and also updating the text content to reflect whatever the value is that we currently have in val. So we've got the output there as well as there. And I can move that down as we're going to be updating what we get the final result for val. So we do have some properties that we can output. And within the array itself, we know that we've got a length property. So if we need to get the length of it, we can select a length property, and that will return the length property. If we want to return back an item that's in the nested array, so let's do that one, where we're selecting the val, and we select the parent array, and then using the index value to select the item that we want to look at. And in this case, the nested array has an index value of 5. So if we out that to the page, then we're getting that array. And if we only want to return back the second item has an index value of 1 in the array, then we can do it this way, where we've got the first array and then the second array, and then this is going to be reflecting that value of the item contained within the array. Also, for arrays, we know that we can loop through arrays. So one of the best ways is to use the for each. So this is a quick and easy way to loop through array items. And then here you just need to assign the item that you want to reference. And then within the console, this will output each one of the items that are in the array as it iterates through. So there's our full list of items that are in the array. You can also get their index value. So we can also add in and return back the index value of the item. So starting at 0, and there we've got the 5 and 6 for the object. So that returns the last one. In addition to the item, the index, we can also output the array. And that actually should be up here. And so this way we're outputting the index, but we're also outputting the entire array as well. And you can see that being reflected when we're looping through. So there's quite a lot of stuff that we can get as we loop through. I'll comment that out. It says we don't really, we don't want to put too much stuff in the console right now, so that it's a lot cleaner and easier to see the results that we're looking at currently. So with the arrays as well, we can add items to the arrays. So if we want to add an item to the end of the array, we can select the main array, and then using push, we'll add the last result to the end. And if we assign and output whatever we've got for the current value of the array into the console, we see that end has been added to the end. There is a callback, which means that this method does return a value. So if we wanted to, we could set val to whatever we've got for the end there. So that's what we get on the callback. It's going to be returning back the length of the new array. We can also remove an item from the end of the array. So that's also another option where we can select the array, and using the pop method, that will remove the item from the end of the array. And I'll also just output this, move it to the bottom. So now we've added that item, but we've also removed it. And for the last value of val, that's why we still have the 8 there, because that's still returning back that last value. So what happens if we assign the pop to val? And we see that it actually, the value of the item that got removed from the end of the array is going to be actually the value that gets returned back in this case. You can add an item to the beginning of the array. So take the array, and with shift, and it's actually going to be unshift, and I'll show you how to remove it afterwards. So we want to add an item to the beginning of the array. So it'll just be a string value of start, so that we see that we've got the value of start there. And this one as well is going to have a callback value. And that's going to also, the same as what we saw with the push, when we're adding in items, it's going to add them into the start of the array. You can also add multiple items, and that will add all of those items in and return back the current array length. There's also a way to remove the first item from the array. So once again, selecting the array, and this time just using shift. And what shift will do is this is going to remove the first item from the array. So that's going to remove out that start string value from the array. So now we're starting at 2, which was originally was the second item in the array. This as well has a callback, and just as we saw with pop, this is going to return back the value that just got removed from the array. You can also check an array and return back an index value of an item in the array. So using the index value method, if we know a value that's currently within the array, we can do a look for that and get the index value being returned back. So in this case, it's going to be 1. If that item does not exist, we're going to get returned back a value of -1. You can also set and select an item at a specific spot position and remove that item. So let's also assign it to val. Select the array, and using splice, we can select out the position of the item that we want to remove. So let's use the index value of 2 and see what gets returned back here. And we need to also specify how many items we want to remove in the splice. So now in this case, we removed out the value of 2 and created a separate array with 2. So this created a new array and assigned it to val. And if we have an array, and if we do this where we've got a second array and assign it to array 1, this is not going to actually copy the array. It's still going to be referencing that same array. So when we look at what we've got for array 2, array 2 is now going to be still identical to array 1. So all of these changes that we did are still taking place within the array 2. So in order to copy an array, you don't just assign a value. You can use the slice in order to copy the array. So we specify the array, and using slice allows us to copy that array. So now if we have array 3, that's going to reflect that original array that we initially set up. Whereas now array 1 and array 2 are going to be different because we've updated them within the code. And that's the output. There, the results that we've got for those. You can create and select out part of an existing array. So using array 1, we'll slice. And the slice is going to be where we want to start and where we want to end the slice. So if we want to start it at index 1 and end it at index 3, let's see what now we have for the value of val. So that's going to be 1 and 3. So in this case, the value is 1 and 3. So we're starting in position 1 and we're ending before position 3. So we're getting just those two values. So if we did a slice for 4, that's going to return back the values from the array of 1, 3, and false. So starting with the index value of 1 and ending with but just before the index value of 4, so not including the index value of 4. So that's how you can get a piece out of the array and create a brand new array using the slice method. So these are some of the commonly used methods and just different things that you can do with arrays.